Good morning, everyone.
Hi, Philip.
Hello.
Hey, Philip,
Hey,
welcome.
Philip, I like your color scheme in your office there. I love the blues and the grays and the radar sign.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
I spent a lot of time on on designing this.
Oh, and your space shuttle is super cool. I like your space shuttle there.
I know you built that, right, Philip? Is that Legos?
I took a week off recently and I built it. I mean, I could show you all of the other ones. I just need
Oh,
to move
yeah.
it a bit.
Yeah, but it's not like the original space shuttle. I think the original space shuttle had 1 million moving parts. I mean, I think probably had a limitation on that on your Lego version.
Yeah, about 3,000, I think. So
Oh, wow.
not quite as many.
Oh, that's a Lego set. How
It
cool.
is.
I
Yeah.
hear that's a lot of fun
That's
to
his
do.
part-time hobby on the side when he needs
Absolutely.
to take a break from work. The Legos come out.
How
So the fun
neat.
thing is when you push the flap at the back, this happens.
Oh, really? That's cool.
That's pretty cool. And
Yeah.
you can open it, obviously. So it's really fun.
There are little
That's really
astronauts
nice.
in there.
There are, or there can be, but they are not right now because they are on holidays.
Yeah, the shuttle isn't flying today.
No, not today. No, it's retired. So
Yeah,
Huge though, because from the back it looks so small, but when you brought it forward, I'm like, wow,
Yeah.
that's
I know it's big.
huge.
yeah.
Yeah.
And the great thing is, I don't know whether there are any Trekkies around, but so far there has never really been a good set of, say, Legos or little building blocks with the Star Trek license theme. And there's actually a German firm that recently acquired the license from CBS, and they're going to release, unfortunately only in Europe, a whole bunch of models from Star Trek, like the Enterprise and Voyager and Deep Space Nine and so on.
Oh, wow.
Oh, you're going to be forever working on your new sets, right? Because you're a big Trekkie,
Yeah.
so we won't see you for a while.
Probably, yeah. I mean, I'm hoping that this is going to happen just before Christmas, so I can spend some time on this.
Yeah, that'd be nice. Now, your kids, are they in the Legos? They build like systems with you and stuff like that?
No,
Or
they
not
may
quite
not.
You don't.
Isn't that interesting how we think our kids are going to get into Legos and they just aren't? And it's like, well, I want to play Legos.
Well, my kids were big into Legos, and that was the biggest hazard around the house for like 5 years is stepping on a Lego part. And
Oh yeah.
yeah,
And
Well, they're
I'm
super
going to show this to you.
Type of pain.
Just a second. So these guys are called blue bricks.
oh
Yeah.
yeah, cool.
Oh my
This is what they're going to build, and that's the Enterprise D. And
Wow.
I mean, it's quite pretty. And they also, and there's a lot of prototypes here of shuttlecraft and the classic Enterprise, even gadgets like the phaser, the Voyager, a Borg cube, a Klingon. So it's all going to be there. So that's really exciting.
Oh, that's great. And so this, so a whole new. So they haven't built anything yet. They don't have. Are they selling anything at this point?
Not yet. It's all announced, but I think they are still working on quality issues and the supply chain, which is a nightmare at the moment. So anything that you make in China and you want to get to Europe or anywhere else just is delayed by a lot.
Yeah.
IKEA started to unlist so many products. We recently bought some new furniture for my parents-in-law, and we're still waiting for a couple of things, but they're not going to show. They're just not available.
Yeah. Yeah, I've noticed that there's, of course, that's been the common complaint around the globe as far as supply chain issues and so forth. And we've talked about that in previous forums about how, it's difficult to have sales plans in place and when you have caps on how much you can actually sell as a manufacturer. So yeah, it's frustrating, but hopefully it's starting to equalize. I'm hearing it's getting better, but every time I go to even the grocery store, I see limited products compared to where you saw greater diversity before. So,
and which is especially bad in the United Kingdom at the moment.
Oh, is it?
So you have the global supply chain issues plus Brexit, and that even leads to some shelves being empty, which is unheard of. I mean, this was never the case.
I was talking to a consultant in the Dominican Republic, and they were saying that they couldn't get in supplies, and so specifically some food supplies, because they have to have a lot of food shipped in, and so people it created a cottage industry of people putting in their own gardens and selling products out of their front yard because they couldn't get produce from the store or whatever. And so that was interesting to hear.
So just like in Cuba, I mean, like they did a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Learning from socialism. Yeah, that's what you do in those times.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, there's a lot of self-survival resources out there. People learning how to compost, make their own food, have their survival food.
Yep. Yeah.
So my parents-in-law, they always lived in Eastern Germany, even when it was the called German Democratic Republic, so the communist country.
Yeah.
The communist half, and they were self-reliant. So they had their own potatoes, they had their own tomatoes, they grew everything themselves, because I mean, apart from maybe bananas and pineapples, nothing was available. Or especially those things were not available. So they needed stuff to grow themselves and share with others, because that was some kind of shadow business. Because the state businesses, they didn't supply them with enough. The only thing you could always get was pork. So that was the only thing that was always available: pork and beer.
Well, the essentials.
Good luck. Oh wow.
And sauerkraut, obviously.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Because that lasts forever.
Grew up in Poland, so like during the communist era, so they were always saying like, you guys are so lucky. When we were kids, like there was never bread on the shelves or toilet paper. So when the toilet paper started, when there was a lack of toilet paper last year, they were like, this is like nothing new. They were like not fazed by it, and I'm like, I'm freaking out. They're like, yeah, this was like normal for us,
Yeah, the stories we'll be able to tell our children, right?
Right.
Or grandkids, I guess, is from my standpoint.
Grandchildren for us, older ones.
Yeah. Well, everybody that's on the line, we're going to get started here in just about 2 minutes. We're just chatting as everybody joins here and we get to the top of the hour. But and we're talking about those supply chain restrictions that we're seeing across the globe and how people are handling them. But yeah, so hopefully that won't be a long-term thing, but we'll see. Yeah.
Not time to get self-sufficient. So
that's right.
You can't survive on ramen noodles.
I've tried.
Have you in college?
College diet.
I like them. It's just horrible that they're not good for you, but I do like them too.
Yeah.
I'm hoping for someday that we are going to see something like protein resequencing or replicators. That would be great.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Just to tell the machine what you want to eat and then just eat it. And
well, yeah, it's like what's that cartoon where they would just press a button and the computer would spit out the food.
Well, I think that's the Star Trek did that, right? So, but I think that, but it, yeah, but it's not so far fetched. I mean, they're right now we're working with Impossible Meat right now, and that that kind of stuff. Which is basically produced from enzymes and different things like that. So.
Yeah, it gets a little bit scary when you realize that that's happening.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm just hope that we still have lots of nice things to eat in the future.
Well, I just remember when I was in high school and I went to Epcot in Disney World, and they had that future city. And they were teaching you how to grow everything.
That's great. Well, we are approaching the top of the hour here, so we should probably get kicked off so we can broadcast to all our listeners out there. So you want to kick us off, Jules?
Absolutely. Well, welcome everyone to the People Strategies Forum. I see we have a nice group here today. I'm seeing some familiar faces, so always Lovely to have you here. Thank you so much for jumping on live, because we love it when it's live. It's just a different energy when we got a nice big group, right? So if you haven't been to one of these sessions, I will give you the rundown what happens here. So you can really consider it as a mastermind of leaders. Every week we have a different guest speaker, and really our goal is to create workplaces where people thrive, where employers reward, and somewhere where customers love. So we do this every week, and we always encourage comments and questions. So if you have any questions along the way, feel free to drop them in the chat. I'll be looking out for those throughout the session today. And if you are coming to us live from any other area like LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, do drop your comments and questions there as well, because we always answer those at the very end. To introduce myself, my name is Jules. I help to host the forum, and I'm in the sidelines checking for your questions as well. And I want to introduce you to the rest of our awesome panel. We always have a lot of fun. We keep it very light, conversational. So the first person I'll introduce is Shah. Now, Shah has 20 years of experience working in HR, working in the corporate world before she decided to branch out on her own and create a couple of companies, HR with a Heart being one of them, and now currently Rocky Mountain Health Advocates. So morning, Shah, good to have you here as always. And we also have Sam, who is the founder and CEO of Comp Team, and Sam is a global certified compensation consultant. So everything to do with talent management, restructuring businesses so that they can have better compensation programs for their employees. That's Sam. Sam's your guy. Now, today we are talking all about setting clear job expectations for your people. And to help us along with that today, we have Philipp Schuch. I tried to get the German pronunciation, and it was a lot for the morning. It's a very strong accent. I don't think I'm there yet. So Philipp Schuch, who is the founder of Grada. And Grada actually was developed in a basement in Germany, which I love. I love that he took his idea, developed it, and it's now grown. They're not just based in Germany, they also have a base in the UK as well as the US. And Grada, they really take on a fresh approach to job evaluation and compensation and management as well. So we are so happy to have you, Philipp. He's over there in Germany with us this morning, so we're so happy you could tune in. And Sam, do you want to kick it off? I know we have a few slides this morning to get through.
Oh yeah, so we'll be jumping into all that. But first, I just wanted to ask Philipp a few questions about how he got into this line of work. I know Philipp, you're involved in a lot of data centric type of organizations where you're really helping businesses make quality decisions based on data and so forth. How did you get into all of this in your career?
Well, I think the moment to take this decision where I wanted to go was when I was at IBM, and I was supporting a personnel development team, so a lot of talent management going on, and only by chance I saw how exciting compensation would be. So then I went into my next role as a junior consultant, associate, or whatever you want to call it. So I mean, I was the guy doing the work and the others were the ones showing it off at Watson Wyatt back in the days. And I was just lucky to be there when they started introducing all of these web-based solutions. And since all of the senior consultants had no idea what to do about this strange thing, the internet, I was their guy. So that was how I made my name there and how I started going up the ranks until I mean, I even stayed for 1 year during the merger with Taos Perrin, and then, as it is always, I went to a client and became a full-time compensation and benefits manager.
Yeah.
So I fell in love with rewards when I was at Watson Wyatt.
And then as you went through your career, I mean, you saw the gap in job evaluation, and that's how Grada was born. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
So what I saw, I did many job grading projects.
Yeah.
And at some point I figured, well, there should be an easier way. You don't really need the secret knowledge of consultants to conduct the grading exercise. And for many companies, spending tens of thousands on the consultant and maybe a license wasn't affordable. So I wanted to build a product that is kind of open and anybody can use it. So be it an independent consultant with their clients, be it the end user, so a company or an organization, and which is affordable, available in several languages, and a product that bridges the gap between job grading, compensation, benchmarking, as well as talent management, and then competencies and career paths, and then all of these things. So really a fully integrated version that can tackle some of the issues that we're facing in the workplace today.
So let's break all this down. So our conversation today is how to set clear expectations for our employees around their position and so forth. And when we talk about job evaluation, what companies need to do job evaluation? I mean, is this essential for a startup versus larger companies? I mean, how do you see people use this process?
So I think that the classic use case for job evaluation, job grading is for determining pay equity, being in compliance and ensuring pay equity in your organization. So that's the classic use case. So every job gets assigned a grade, and you might then build pay bands or any other kind of pay structure, and then the employee will inherit this grade from the job that they hold. So that's the classic use case. And this is something that is probably relevant for any organization with a certain level of complexity and maybe at least 75 employees. So the smallest organization that uses our system grader has maybe about 75 employees. They are, most of them are much bigger, but 75 is the minimum. But when it comes to designing your own job architecture, so when it comes to really bridging the gap between compensation management and talent management, then it becomes, it could even be a small organization, because competencies can be used for so many purposes. To have your own competency model, you can use this in recruiting, you can use this for performance management and several other things. So this is even something that is meaningful for a smaller organization, a startup that is on a growth path. So where it makes a lot of sense to establish structures early on that will support your entire processes.
Right. And so, and a lot of that is, especially when you're in a growing business. I mean, I just think about it from the ground up. So if you're just starting a business, you're getting some people together, maybe, 5 or 6 people, and everybody's doing a different job or several different jobs. Maybe they're doing a little bit of marketing, and they're doing a little bit of customer or client service and so forth. And so at the very beginning of these job descriptions are very individually based, right? And then we go through that evolution of when we start seeing some specialization, and you're growing as a company, and then we can say, okay, now we have a person that's doing a defined job, a single defined job, such as an accountant or whatever, and we start building the job descriptions and around that particular job family or function, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the moment when you can really start measuring the performance against the job profile, because you have the job holder and the job profile, the job description, and a set of competencies associated with it. And then you can really have a look at how this compares in reality. Before, and that's the point where we are still at, it's not so much about the job description, but it's more about the employee's initiative. And openness to tackle new challenges, to think and go the extra mile in a very small organization, because there's just no job description that can capture what you have to do in a startup right at the beginning. I mean, I do anything. I'm just glad that I got rid of accounting earlier this year, because this was something I was still doing.
Oh yeah. as a small business, right? Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And then so as we develop these, but as you get the position of accountant in your company and so forth, you further define this, the next piece that comes in is those levels of development and scope of role, right? So as and that's the first, and that's the first semblance of a career path when you have a person that comes in and they say, okay, well, the next, if we get to this next level, or if you develop this level of competence, then you can get this promoted to the next level of accountant. And then as companies further evolve, that's when we get into that more of a matrix type of career pathing and so forth. But let's just back up to our original intent here, setting clear expectations for our people. So how does job evaluation do that? I mean, if we start working to set clear expectations, and what does the process look like there?
So you need something to start with. Mm-hmm. And in many cases, it's a job description. And you would kind of analyze the job description. You would try to understand the essential job requirements, and then apply a system of your choice in order to grade or to evaluate the job. Mm-hmm. And you might have different outcomes. So when you use a classic system like job classification, that's something that you will find in every compensation survey, such as Radford or Willis Towers Watson or Culpeper. Your evaluation result is going to be a level like P2 or M1, M5, whatever they have called this. But when you do a job grading exercise, your result is going to be a bit more abstract. So it's going to be something like a grade. So that's a grade 12, that's a grade 14, that's a grade 9. And this happens by, especially when you do it in a way that is not job classification, where you would just compare the whole job against a very short description. But when you use a point factor-based system, such as Grader, you would look at different factors and assign the right factor level. So what kind of education is typically required? How much experience is required? Mm-hmm. What kind of problem solving is required for a job holder on this job? And then there's an algorithm in the background that will either give you the points, so that's point factor-based job evaluation, or it converts the points directly into a grade, which then would be point factor-based job grading. Mm-hmm. But you need something as an input to take these decisions.
Okay. And just to clarify this for our listeners out there, we're talking about the ways of doing job evaluation. And Philipp is talking about two primary methods. One is being the classification method, and the other is a point factor method. Now generally the classification method, we're grouping jobs by their function and subfunction and taking a leveling guide to determine their level in the organization. But it's fraught with bias and so forth. And that's why the Gradar tool is built around a point factor methodology that looks at more of that asks specific questions around the position to determine the appropriate level. And as I understand, Philipp, this is quite important today because of the demands around having fair pay, equal pay regulations, and so forth. Is that correct?
Absolutely. I mean, I can illustrate this with an example. So this is the leveling guide from our friends at Culpeper. So you can see you have those 5 levels for professionals. And as the name indicates, professionals is usually something that would require some kind of at least undergraduate degree. And then you have those 4 categories like overview and complexity and education and experience. And then that's this whole job comparison. So you would look at your financial controller or at your specialist marketing, your finance manager, and then try to figure out what level is the right one. That's fine when it comes to benchmarking, because you don't need to be as precise, because it doesn't have to be as reliable as, for example, your internal job grading system, which you would use to defend yourself against any kind of equal pay claim, and which you would use to ensure that employees are being paid fairly. So when we go into a system like a grader system, and that's true for many other systems, you would choose, in our case, the career path, and then you would be looking at what kind of problem solving is required for this job. And that is often based then on a definition. In our case, this is a one-liner, which we would combine with a much more detailed definition. And you would go through all of these factors all the way down to communication, where there are 7 options to select from, together with a detailed definition for each of these one-liners. And then you would click on calculate, and then you would get your grade. Mm-hmm. So that's a huge difference in how to evaluate the jobs.
Yeah, and I think this is a huge importance right now, because as we're evolving the way we work. I mean, there's a lot right now. There's a lot of remote work or hybrid work and so forth, and people are working in different environments. And so, as you can imagine, we were talking about the accountant earlier, but if we take just an HR position, such as an HR business partner, and we have an HR business partner that's located in the headquarters, and perhaps several that are remote in different parts of maybe the world or in different states in the United States, and they're all their title is HR business partner, but we have to understand what level are they, and what is the scope of their role. And so, in doing this in a fair way is a lot easier to do this through the GradeR system, because you're going through this point factor methodology that is asking you questions specifically about that individual or that role, and how it's being applied to the company. So it's a less biased way to determine their level in the organization.
I had a chat with a guy, I think he's from Spain, and he works in Belgium. Just the other day, and he described a case where, you might in France have many jobs on very high grades, basically delivering the same results like their colleagues in Spain, who on average will have lower grades, because maybe they don't hire as many superstars as the French do. You never know. So this, in that case, analyzing the jobs, understanding the jobs, and having the grades in place will actually help you with organizational design. So you can say, well, those jobs are too high, and our colleagues in Spain deliver the same results with many more junior or with more junior jobs than what you do in France. So why is that? So this is actually something that you could use for cost savings as well.
That's right. That's great. I think that, and then many of you out there that maybe be small business owners or might be thinking right now, it's like, well, I'm not hiring people in Spain, or I'm not hiring people in India or whatever. But I just want to give you the wake up call. Now that we've gone through the pandemic, and companies have figured out that they can do remote work effectively, those knowledge workers in your organization can effectively be hired from anywhere in the globe now. So we've kind of opened the market on talent. Earlier this week and last week, we've heard stories come out in the news about Google and Facebook talking about the different pay practices for remote workers and so forth. Mm-hmm. Well, behind this, their strategy is that the reason why they're opening up their remote workforce, and they're saying, hey, we're going to have more remote work in our company, is that the main strategic purpose of doing that is to open up their hiring pool, so they can hire people from different parts of the globe, from any state in the United States that they want to, and in a sense get more talent into their organization. So even if you're a small business in Kansas somewhere, you can source people from anywhere in the globe in the future. So that's going to be the new normal. So this is going to be much more important as far as understanding how to level those positions in the organization.
Absolutely. And then in that case, we're not only talking about compensation, because that's going to be a very interesting discussion going forward. How much to pay someone who sits in Kansas compared to someone who's still in California or at the East Coast. But it's about what are the job requirements and what are the competencies, and how will people interact within a team or within the entire organization. And so what we did, and I mean, that might not be the perfect answer for everybody, but we said, okay, we're going to use the results from this grading exercise, and we are going to, I'm going to cancel that, and we're going to show job-specific competencies. And that's what I mentioned with really bridging the gap between compensation and talent management. You need competencies as well as a job description to do that. And competencies, and that's the model of TMA, which you know quite well too, they come with behavioral anchors that can be directly translated into the performance of an employee, because it's written there what the expectation is in terms of behaviors. So this is something that you can compare an employee against.
That's great. And so let me just break this down for our listeners as well, because when we look at a traditional job description, there's technical requirements or technical skills that are required, and which we can refer to as technical competencies. And there's also behavioral competencies that are required, especially as you are ascending into the organization into higher levels. Behaviors are become quite important as far as developing people and so forth. But Shar, in your organization, certain behaviors or competencies are quite important to set expectations with your team, right? I think we were talking last week about how you are hiring for specific competencies, and you're setting expectations with your new hires around those competencies. Is that right?
That's correct. We're evaluating companies, skill sets, and talents, and we're now just getting to the phase where we're comparing all of our team members to each other, and really looking at those, for example, that are more assertive versus those that are more problem solvers, the individuals that have more empathy, for example, and really digging into those behaviors. And we're using positive psychology to really identify the performance and the expectations, and driving to those expectations through positive dialogue. And my staff and my leaders have all really given me a lot of positive feedback about that. They say it's very unique, very different, nothing like they've seen at any other employer. And so far, it's actually resulted in higher profits and higher return on investment to develop in these programs. So yeah, I think it's been amazing. And then I also want to throw in there, Sam, you helped us with our compensation program and analysis. And I feel that my employees and leaders really respected the fact that we invested in having support from a professional like your team at Conteam, and the expertise to really look at how we're paying our people appropriately.
Yes. And how many people are in your company now, Shar?
So we're at 25. We do have several open positions because we've been struggling a bit to get these final positions filled. But we've been thriving through most of the pandemic. We were only shut down for a little while, but it became more and more critical because we are looking for diversity. We're looking for different age groups. We're looking for all different aspects. And so we're moving to really respecting that as far as how we're equitable with our pay, our compensation, and how we're driving performance in the organization. And I realize that now is more critical than ever to really focus on this. And my past working with big corporations, way behind the 8 ball on this. So I think that, back to your point, being the startup companies or the small companies, starting to do this right at the beginning is critical, because we expect to grow up to maybe 40 employees maybe in the next year.
Oh yeah, and that's why it's important, even if you're a small company with 25 employees, and if your plan is having growth, it's important to lay down this infrastructure, this job infrastructure, which Gradar helps develop, and determining the functions and the levels and so forth. Philipp, could you show us the cross comparison and give people an understanding of how you have the categorization of jobs and also the levels in the same view?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I started doing this back in the days at Watson White, I spent days on building a cross comparison. this nowadays is what you see is what you get. And it takes a second to build a cross comparison. So you would choose what to see on the y-axis. In this case, it's the grade, and you would choose what you want to see on the x-axis. And this can be any variable that is in the system. So right now we're using something called a global job family, but we could use something called the organization unit 2 and filter the results to, well, what you want to see.
Mhm.
Could even limit it to a certain career path, like just see the management roles or just project management, whatever you want to do.
So this is back to the point that we were talking about earlier when Philipp was telling us about the evolution of jobs and how you can use the system as you evolve as a company. But as you can see in that last piece there, we can see the progression by level, and also the other types of functions that are available in your company that people can move to as part of a career path.
Exactly. This is another use case that job grading is often used for. So you would do the analysis, and then you are able to outline what are direct career paths. So what is on your career ladder? So a classic junior, regular, and senior job, or maybe might be a horizontal move. So moving from payroll to finance to accounting, or the other way. So that's something some people might not have on their minds, but in terms of really enriching someone's career, this is definitely a good thing to do, because the more you know about the organization, the less likely it is that you're going to leave this organization. So even for an employer, in order to decrease job turnover, this might be a good investment. And
that's right. That's right. And very timely right now, because right now people are asking, what do I need to do in my job to be successful? How can I perform better in my current job? And then how do I get to the job of the future, right?
And when I was preparing for today's session, I pulled up this blog from our friends at Science for Work. And they do a great job at translating scientific findings, such as the results from a meta-analysis, into something that is readable for normal people. So even I understand this. So this is pretty cool. And they analyzed or they asked the question, so what is contributing to employee turnover? And they found this meta-analysis that shows there are a couple of job characteristics that might lower your employee turnover. It's not always going to work, but in most cases, as supported by the science, it is going to work. And when we look at this, it's the variety of tasks and skills required. Or in other words, the more exciting your job is, the less likely it is that you're going to quit it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Also, something like task identity. Do you actually know what you're doing there? Yeah, so this is important, and I think we could talk about Friends and Chandler's job and all of these things. I think in reality he never had an idea what he was doing there, and which led him to leave the job. So you can learn from popular culture. That's
right.
Yeah.
Well, that's an important point. A lot of times when a person starts in an organization, they need to have clarity on what needs to happen, what they need to do, and to accomplish, to be successful, to start up and so forth. And having that task identity, if it's captured in a job description or and some other methodology, is going to be very helpful.
Right. And I found that when I was working in HR in a healthcare system and I would coordinate the new employee orientation, I would often, at times we would have, good 30 to 60 people in the room. And I'd often ask the new hires, have you even seen your job description? Has your hiring leader been clear about the expectations expected of you? And most likely the new employee said no.
Yeah.
And so that was really fascinating to me because, they may have saw the job description, so to speak, on a job posting once, but when they really started the position, they hadn't really seen it. And this is several weeks into their employment too.
Yeah. And, you know,
So,
the bottom line is, you know, when we think about job descriptions, it's completely, you know, it's just not exciting, right? It just seems like just an administrative document that's not, you know, that's not very exciting to deal with. But there's different ways to interface with it. You know, you can, and nowadays, if you have it as part of your a list that you can go through as part of a task list that you can go through on your weekly one-on-ones, and that could be a document, a living document for that particular individual that you can come back to.
We're creating a roadmap, so it's a little more interactive, and where the new hire will have, it's kind of like a journey path written on a one sheet of paper, so it's very simplistic. And then their job, the new hire's job, is to do a Zoom call or interface with that particular expert for compliancy or administrative processes or paperwork processes, and then have that one-on-one directly with that expert in the company. And then that particular document is initialed, so to speak. So it sounds kind of simplistic, but employees appreciate that we're so transparent and honest and simplistic and talking about these things from the get-go. Because often in that first 90 days, the new hire is so concerned that they're not going to do a good job or be able to retain or make it, so to speak. So, you know, building in those structures and processes is really helpful from that new hire retention process.
Yeah. Because as we know, as in the recruiting function and also in the onboarding period, you know, retaining that person and having that strong first impression is really important. You know, making sure that they know how to be successful in their job, what to accomplish, and that's what's going to keep them longer term and make them successful.
Yeah.
So one thing I just want to look back. I see that we have some questions here, Jules.
Yeah, so going back to the job evaluation, the question that we have is, what are the HR components that are directly impacted by the job evaluation?
So I think we talked about a couple of them. So the classic use case, compensation, then career pathing, and in a way, job enrichment, or maybe job enlargement. So those two things, they're definitely something that can be inspired by the results, as well as the alignment of in your own job architecture. So be it the title structure or your competency model, the ranks in your organization, certain job categories, a translation towards a bonus plan. So all of these things can easily be aligned with a job grading structure in your organization.
Yeah, and let's just take that through the entire employee journey. So when we're talking about the job description or job evaluation and understanding what the job components are, you know, it's used in recruiting, right? Because we need to know what the competencies that we're looking for in the organization or out in the marketplace, so that we can match the company's requirements with those candidates out there. So we need to know that. We need to know in the onboarding process. So these are going to be as we just discussed, the tasks that are required that a person needs to know as they get ramped up in their job. And so you're setting expectations. And then when we go into teaming, it's also important because we need to have clear definition of how one person is doing a role versus another person on the team. So there's clear delineation of responsibilities and understanding the different levels of competency of those individuals. So a person knows where to go to for help and so forth. It's also important in development, as we were talking about. And, you know, you have what's required in your job now, and that job of the future. You want to know how to get there. Succession planning. If you have a clear job or job structure, you can identify those different levels that have succession into that next role, and so that you can look at people across your organization that have those particular talents or competencies for succession planning. And then all the way into even out placement or right placement. If you're trying to recruit for the same job or a job in the organization, you look for people within that talent pool to be able to bring in. So really, this is the infrastructure that is necessary. That's why we were talking, even at the smallest level organizations, it's quite important to develop this.
Yeah,
agree
and
with that?
I could argue this affects all aspects or every component of HR. I
Mhm.
could argue in every area as far as how this is a major impact.
Yeah.
Philip, you were saying something?
Well, I was agreeing, and no, the thing is, if you have a clear idea about what the job requirements are, everything is going to be much easier.
Right.
And so you will be able to provide feedback. You will be able to hire much faster than any other case. And just the talent acquisition phase will be accelerated because it's going to be clear what you're looking for. And it's not going to be, well, it could be someone with an apprenticeship, an associate's degree from your next door community college, or a master's degree. We don't care. No, you have a clear idea what your expectations are, which will lead to a clear idea on what you're willing and able to pay, and a clear idea on what the competencies are that you want to observe during the talent acquisition process. Because when it comes to performance of talent acquisition, it's all about, if you don't want to use an intelligence test, it's all about using some kind of structured interview. And you can only structure your interview and always ask the same questions if you have a clear idea of what the job requirements are.
And
Right.
in such a time and age of people's and unrest and changing jobs and changing careers and maybe transferring to a remote opportunity, it's really, really important to have that clarity to reduce the angst, the anxiety, the nervousness about starting a new position, and really where that individual's role applies and the progression of how it's going to be more successful as that individual continues working with the company. But this is a really critical time to make sure we are very clear. So I totally agree with you, Philip.
Yeah. So let's just talk about another application, mergers and acquisitions.
Oh, yeah.
So having this structure in place can make that make your integration of a new company or merging with a new company so much easier. So can you tell us a little bit about that, Philip?
Yeah, that's those projects are actually very exciting because they happen under a lot of pressure, and you need to know the new organization. And the beauty is if both companies have, it's actually both, not four of them, just two. So if there are two companies that have both a job grading system in place and they have clarity on the jobs that they have, then it's so much easier to bring the people from both organizations into the new organization. Because some might have fancy titles, but in reality be on, let's say, clerk level positions. But in the other organization, they might not have the fancy titles, but might contribute to strategy and be involved in a lot of the tactical decision making. So they are more of the thinkers. And this might be what is required in the new organization. So you will have a very good idea what your people can do in both organizations and then merge them into a new one. So that's very exciting. And you will be able to communicate what you want from them.
Yeah, I find that's this super important. So when I have clients that are getting ready for a merger and acquisition, I make sure that they have a clear job structure in place and they've done effective job evaluation so that they're prepared for that. Because the last thing you want to worry about when you're going through a merger with another company is geez, is our structure sound, and do we have to, what are we going to have to do from a compensation perspective to bring people in this new organization? You have other things to worry about, such as culture and integration and communication and these things that are going to make that merger, successful. So it's important to have this infrastructure in place to be important. But I think we have another really good question, Jules, that just came up.
Yeah, yes, I was going to hop in right after you were finished. So a question, actually, it is around compensation. So the job evaluation will help understand the worth of each job in the organization. However, a lot of time the pay gets influenced by the person who's occupying the job. So how can we set rules around how much importance should be given to the job and to a person who is in that job position? How do we please everybody? How do we create a win-win?
So with your job grading in place and with your compensation structuring in place, you will be able to professionalize the entire salary management process. Because for your people managers, there's going to be an additional layer of information available during the process, be it hiring or the annual salary review. And a very simple way might be to have something like a pay band structure in place. So a pay band for each job. And that's not to be confused with market ranges. But a pay band might be something going from $40,000 to $60,000 a year with a midpoint of 50,000. So, and within your organization, and that's about pay equity, you would want every job holder on this grade to be paid between 40 and 60,000, because that's the range that your organization is able and willing to afford. Within the pay range, there are going to be a couple of, not everybody will get the same. I mean, this is not communism, but there's going to be diversity. So one thing might be the market rates for a certain job. So you might see that your marketing specialist will be paid less than your senior IT administrator, even though they have the same grade. Mm-hmm. That's market and that's supply and demand playing into this. But on the other hand, you might have someone who has a long job tenure and who has seen a lot of inflation-based increases. So they will continually raise within the pay band up to a certain level. Or you might have someone who's actually performing very well. And for them, you might want to have a component called merit increase. So, and the merit increase is going to cause an accelerated increase of an individual's salary. And that's a very important component. In some countries, this is going to be a nightmare because you will have to negotiate this with your works council and the unions and everyone. In other countries, it's going to be much easier to implement a merit-based increase program. But it's definitely a good idea to have a dedicated budget to accelerate the salary development of those who are performing well.
That's great. And one thing I'd like to add in this is that it's a really important, I mean, this is a good question, because when we're doing job evaluation, one of the hardest things for a manager to differentiate is the job versus the individual. They're always thinking about the individual because that's either their top player in that particular job or the only person in that job, and so they're thinking of the individual in that context. And so as we go through the evaluation, and the first thing is you need to understand those positions that have multiple incumbents. So several people performing the same job. And in that particular situation, you have to look at the job and it's and what's required to do it at the expected function. And so you really have to separate the people from the position. But as you get up into the ranks and also in some unique jobs, there's going to be just a single person performing the role in that particular area. And this person might have a specialized skill set to be able to do that role effectively and so forth. And so the job and the individual is almost one. And so in a situation like that, you can bring in more of the individual context into the discussion of doing the leveling. But of course, once you start getting more people in that job, you need to start having a more of a job-based context.
And the gold standard of compensation management is probably working with a process which is owned by mostly HR. Mm-hmm. So HR can serve both as kind of the designer of the pay structure as well as the process owner, and they will be the ones controlling the process. So they will be looking at the results. But final decisions will in most cases be taken by people managers on how to develop the pay of their employees. The problem is that the people manager can only see their direct reports. So they won't be able to see the entire population. And they might be limited in the decision-making that they can do. So what really then the platinum standard is going to be is to get additional information on how comparable job holders are paid in your organization. Mm-hmm. So your 20-year-old marketing specialist with 5 years of job tenure in your organization will then, based on such attributes compared against comparable job holders in the organization. And then you might be able to see, okay, my employees actually paid significantly less than others. So here I have a case to ask for a higher increase and talk to the C-level about getting this higher increase. So that's really the platinum standard, using advanced regression analysis in order to understand the level of pay that individuals in the organization have. There are very few tools out there who can do that at the moment. We are working on this at the moment because we find this very interesting and exciting. And it's going to be available later this year, I think.
I'm looking forward to that. That's going to be great to see. So Philipp, I want to switch gears a little bit and bring another back us to this discussion of how we can set clear expectations for our people in a particular job. And I'm looking at that chart that's behind you above your cool space shuttle that you have there, the different general career tracks that we're looking at. And do you have a graphic that you could bring up on that?
I do. Let me.
And so the main pieces here is there's management, there's project management, and individual contributor. And the reason why it's important for this is to set expectations around these specific tracks that are different. And in your tool, Philipp, you have questions in your point factor methodology that are different for these particular tracks, right?
That's true. We have tens of thousands of job evaluations in the system by now. And we can see that the vast majority of jobs are individualized as individual contributors. There's maybe about 10, 12, 15%, I'm not quite sure about the numbers, that are evaluated as managers, and only about 2% that are project managers. And then there are distinct questions for these career paths. I'm going to pull them up. So you have common factors like professional knowledge and experience needed. And then you have a question about what kind of people responsibility is this individual contributor going to have? Also, what kind of functional responsibility are they going to have? And with this factor, together with process responsibility, you can actually bring your individual contributors on the same level as middle managers or even top managers in your organization. Which means that when we look at the grade map again, you could design jobs and enrich jobs so that they will be on the same level as the management jobs in your organization. So not everybody has to become a manager. And your manager doesn't have to be the expert on every single task that their employees are going to do. So there's this concept in the agile work of servant leader management, where the manager is really focused on managing people and not on managing the discipline or the process or the functional requirements. So in that case, we might even have the situation where the manager is going to have a smaller grade than the experts in their team. Mm-hmm. And that's something that is really modern about the grader system, and which makes it compatible to modern work environments or new work environments.
Yeah, so this is really important, and I want to point this out because when these different tracks are critical as we are owners and leaders of the organization, we think of all employees somewhat similar. We need to apply this training, and it applies to all employees, but we really need to categorize these, what they're doing, because we know that our managers need manager training, and we know our individual contributors, you need a unique set of training and setting up expectations of how to operate as an individual contributor and be a team member. And then we also have to realize that our project managers also have a unique set of training to be able to be a technical expert in their field, and then also be able to operate a project management across the organization if needed, or in a specialized group. So another specialized training.
So what I just did, and that's always the fun part about these sessions, they are not scripted. So they can be a bit chaotic. So this is the job It's a demo job of the software architect. And you have the different factors here, and you have one factor called people responsibility. So in this case, it says, it needs training and instructing of others. So if this is the requirement for the employees who hold this job, then maybe support them with this task. Look at all of your jobs and filter the ones who will be training and instructing others and send them to a course, how to prepare a training and how to provide feedback. So it's not only about pay, but it's about learning about the organization, learning about the jobs, having them in the system and filtering the results in order to prepare something else. And the same is true for process management. So level 3 means this is typically the first level of process ownership. Process ownership should be done right. So educate them on how to use your process management and design tool. And do that on a regular basis, because the tool might change or your notation practices might change, but use this information and educate your people based on this.
That's great. Thanks, Philip. Well, I know we've been going through a lot of details in this conversation, and but I want to first, ask if there's any questions. Please go ahead and put it into the chat at this time. We are approaching the top of the hour, so I want to acknowledge our sponsor. As always, we're very fortunate to have the TMA method support us, and if you're interested in learning more about the TMA method and how it works with GreatR, because it is part of the GreatR system and those competencies and so forth, please reach out to me. And also, I would I know there's some people that expressed some interest in the GreatR tool overall, so I'm going to go ahead and launch this poll. You're going to launch this poll. If you want to sign up for a GreatR demo, you can go ahead and have that consultation with Philip, and we'll go ahead and set that up. And if you would like to sign up for a demo of the TMA assessment or the TMA system, you can also sign up for there as well. In addition, Philip, what is the best way for people to contact you, and if they're on a different platform, one of our streaming platforms?
Go on GreatR.com, sign up for the free trial, or book a demo. That's really the easiest way. There's a calendar link. You might end up with Sam. You book it from the American page, or with James from the UK, or Anna from Spain. But that's definitely the best way to get in touch with us.
Mm-hmm.
And I just dropped that in the chat for anyone that's wondering. So the link is right there. You can click it. It'll take you straight there.
And one thing I want to note about, I'm fortunate to be part of that GreatR network, and the nice thing about GreatR is a global tool. And that means that there's professionals in Philip's network that are all across the globe. So if you need to understand what is the pay practices in different countries and what they do there and how job evaluation is applied and so forth, there's experts of every corner that is part of Philip's network. So I highly recommend
Very impressive.
That. Yeah.
Very impressive. Globalization.
Yes, that's right.
Cool.
Maybe I can tell a very short story. So we are right now, for one of the biggest African countries, building their government's grading system, which runs on our server. So it's not GreatR, but it's similar and tailored to their needs.
Very cool.
When we started this 5 years or 6 years ago, I would never have imagined that at some point, me in my basement, I would be building such a system for one of the biggest African states. That's amazing.
Wow. That's really cool.
Very impressive.
In addition to building your Legos.
Exactly, yeah.
That's right. It all comes from that German engineering there, Philip. So, that's right.
That's what you made your first rockets fly. Yeah,
that's right. We owe a lot to you guys.
Right.
Great. All right. Well, it was a wonderful conversation. Do we have any questions, Jules, that we didn't cover?
No, that was everything. No one dropped in any last minute questions, so we can start to wrap up.
Okay. Well, I'd like to acknowledge our next week's speaker, which is Alex. And she's going to be talking about evolving leadership. And so she's a specialist and a leadership coach. and a very engaging speaker, and big heart. And as always, I always, Alex has been a good friend of mine for years, and she's part of my Vistage group here in the United States. And so I see her on a monthly basis. And so I'm really excited to have her on as a speaker. Great. So everyone, thank you so much. And thank you, Philip, for sharing your knowledge once again with us, and look forward to our next discussion.
Nice to see you, Philip. Thank you.
Likewise. Take care.
All
Bye-bye.
right. Take care, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.